update on climate conditions around the region and what to look for here. Some general information about these webinars. The name has changed. We're going kind of shifting to north central U.S., but it's really the same series that we've been referring to in the context of Great Plains and Midwest. This represents a collaboration among federal, regional, and state partners, including NOAA, USDA, the National Drought Mitigation Center, the High Plains and Midwestern Regional Climate Centers, and various members of the American Association of State Climatologists. For your information looking ahead, our next webinar will be in August on the 18th with Jim Angel, state climatologist in Illinois, presenting that one. Past webinars are available. They're archived on both the Midwestern Regional Climate Center and High Plains Regional Climate Center websites, and you have links there to find those. Today's agenda. First of all, it's been hot. We kind of all know that, and our folks in the National Weather Service office in Omaha have been doing a little bit of applied research to try to figure out just how hot it's been. In the meantime, we're going to talk about current climate conditions, get a little bit of historical perspective to those. We'll talk about some of the impacts that we're seeing and may develop as a result of our climate conditions throughout the region. We'll get into outlooks for the month ahead, the season, and a little bit farther out to take an initial glance at the winter. And then, as Doug mentioned, we'll have time for questions, and we've got a panel there of folks that can help with those. We'll start by looking at precipitation throughout the region. In the upper left, you have a map summarizing precipitation over the past 30 days ending yesterday, July 20th. In the upper right is a similar map, but now going back 2 months. So we've got a 30-day, a 60-day summary. And then in the lower right, an accumulated precipitation for the year. And these are all expressed as a % of normal. So over the last 30 days, you can see that we've continued to see some precipitation deficits develop in portions of Wyoming and South Dakota, as well as in portions of Michigan and Ohio. Otherwise, as you look at that map, you note there has been actually quite abundant precipitation over a large portion of the region, with the heaviest area there centered in the western part of Kentucky and neighboring states. So we're seeing a continuation of some patterns, but of dryness in certain areas, but a general relief in terms of precipitation, in some cases more than desired across portions of the region. Soil moisture anomalies are summarized on the next slide. Again, areas in orange and reddish, yellowish tones are showing deficits of soil moisture, and those areas really highlight portions of Ohio and Michigan on this product, a little bit more so than what shows up in the areas of Wyoming and South Dakota and such. Okay. But again, I think with looking at a lot of these products, it's not a case of relying simply on one to give you the whole picture of what the situation looks like. So we have to piece these things together. The next slide is summarizing stream flows from USGS Water Watch. And when you look at that, again, for the most part, you see a lot of blue and a lot of green shades that suggest that our streams throughout the region, much of the region, are at or above normal, in some cases well above normal in terms of discharge for this time of year. Meanwhile, there are some areas of below normal flows depicted in the same areas where we've had precipitation deficits and some soil moisture dryness there, Ohio, Michigan, and again in the Dakotas and parts of Wyoming, though again it doesn't show up there quite as much. Move on to the next slide, and we're looking at temperatures now for the region. And again, in the upper left, average temperature departure from normal over the last 30 days, and then a departure from normal for the last 60 days in the upper right, and finally in the lower right, temperature departures for the year. Okay, so we'll start this time in the lower right, and you'll note that it's been a warm year, and we've certainly seen some press releases on that, recently and certainly at various points this year. But if we jump back up to the upper left, we see that during the past period, the past month, while it's a bit warm now, certainly throughout the region, we saw cooler than normal temperatures throughout much of the northern and part of the plains and throughout much of the Midwest, with the exception of a band across the southern tier of the region where we had above normal temperatures. And that pattern really represented a flip or transition from the previous month, where temperatures were warmer than normal in the upper plains and a bit cooler than normal across the southern tier. But nonetheless, when you put that together, we've been a bit warmer than normal throughout the summer to this point. Again, over the past week, we've had high temperatures and heat stress that have been widespread throughout the region. The evaporative stress index highlights a bit of that situation in terms of the heat throughout the region, the dryness, and the demand for water. And again, you can see the areas in Ohio, Michigan, in this case stretching through the northern part of Indiana and beyond, but a very, very strong core centered in northeastern Wyoming and the western part of South Dakota and into North Dakota there. So again, different products maybe have a little different sensitivity or focus, but when you put them together, the story is pretty consistent in terms of areas of dryness that are showing up, and then otherwise situations are much more favorable throughout the region. Okay. But move on to taking a quick look at the Great Lakes. This is a graphic, a little bit difficult to read maybe. It's showing the last 20 years of lake levels for Lake Superior at the top, down to Lake Ontario at the bottom. And what you see there, what you notice, first of all, of course, is a cyclical pattern to those. And on the right-hand margin, you see the current year and projections in the darker shade going from blue into the browns, projections going forward. So lake levels have been above normal generally through the region, but are projected to decline and generally above or in line with what has been the situation over the last couple decades. So nothing terribly unusual standing out there. Coupled with that is a map of lake temperatures, average temperatures for the Great Lakes, and again, certainly warmer temperatures on the southern waters and cooler to the north. Nothing too surprising in that situation. And unfortunately, we don't have that in terms of an anomaly to give you a notion of how that compares to what might be normal there. But hopefully you'll find some value in that map. Okay. Moving on and now trying to assimilate some of these various other pieces of information that we've looked at is the U.S. Drought Monitor that was just released with an update today. So first of all, you'll note the area of drought in Wyoming and South Dakota compared to last week. If you recall, that map has certainly intensified. The extent of D3 extreme drought has expanded, and we have a very distinct core developing there now, and it's starting to spread and becoming a little bit more extensive in terms of areas of D2 and particularly so in terms of D1 extending there. And then we shift back over to northern Ohio and Michigan. Conditions are not quite as bad throughout the region. Based on reports that I received from Jeff Andreessen, the state climatologist in Michigan, there have been some rains providing some relief in some areas, but other areas have certainly missed those rains, and so there is dryness within the area there. Okay. Otherwise, on that map, you will see an area. I direct you to southern Iowa, northern part of Missouri, right there at the western edge of Illinois, where there had been dryness developing in Iowa. Again, reports from our state climatologist there, Harry Hilliker, indicating that widespread rains over the last week or so, and some of that happening after the cutoff date for information to be sent in for the drought monitor. So that indication of dryness there probably is on the way out, and conditions are certainly improving in that region. The next map shows a 1-month comparison looking back. How much change has there been in terms of drought status? So a dynamic perspective to the drought monitor. And again, the message is consistent with what we've been saying. Deteriorating conditions in Wyoming, South Dakota, some deterioration in Michigan, Ohio, general improvement, or really just simply a non-issue in other areas of the region. Now here's the same map that you looked at just a moment ago in terms of the drought monitor for July 19th, and a little bit of historical perspective. On the right-hand margin, you see the last 4 years for the approximate same date here in July, and you look down at the bottom there to 2012, when we had a very extensive region of intense drought that developed over much of the Midwest and then pushed into the Great Plains and was concentrated there. Continued into 2013, but as we got to 2015, other than the folks out on the West Coast in that area, the Great Plains and Midwest was very benign in terms of drought conditions, and things have deteriorated just a little bit this year. The folks in Wyoming, South Dakota would say it's certainly a lot, but region-wide, if we look at that perspective, again, the situation is that there's just not a lot of drought concern at this point of the summer. Next slide, then, taking a look and kind of thinking about impacts a little bit about what some of this might mean. A map showing U.S. corn areas that are experiencing drought, product from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and this map overlays areas of drought that are highlighted on the drought monitor with the major corn areas, and shows about 6% of corn production within an area that's experiencing drought. And again, with the improvement in parts of Iowa, Missouri, and such, that 6% is probably actually a little bit less if we were to bring that a little closer up to date. This next pair of maps, new products from the Midwestern Regional Climate Center, showing not growing degree days, but modified stress degree days for corn within the region. The map on the left showing accumulated stress days throughout the year, and probably more importantly, the map on the right showing departure from normal. And again, much of the Midwest and Great Plains shows in the pale green color, which indicates that levels of stress are very close to what we would expect normally in terms of accumulated stress degree days for corn. And again, some pockets that have not been as fortunate. So moving on a little bit more to climate impacts, well, it's too wet. In some areas it's too wet, so extensive areas in western Kentucky have recorded 10 inches or more of rain here in this month. One storm in particular produced more than 8 inches of rain within 5 hours in Marshall County in western Kentucky. That out to about a 1,000-year recurrence interval for that event. Corn, soybean crops have been damaged. You can see some photographs there of standing water in the fields in the lower two, and the top photograph of water that has breached a retention pond within the region. So these conditions have been worse in western Kentucky, but have extended into neighboring states. And as a result of that, areas in Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri are at an elevated risk for fungus. And conversation with Jim Angel, state climatologist there in Illinois, mentioned some kind of field documentation of machinery out spraying fungicides and trying to deal with that issue before it gets out of hand. And otherwise really don't have any detailed information on that. Well, it's also been too dry. So we talked about that a little bit. We've got some photographs of drought conditions in South Dakota. Drought is intensifying in northeastern Wyoming and western South Dakota. Dryland alfalfa fields are projected to be worst since 1988, based on information that Laura Edwards with South Dakota Climate Extension passed along. Pastures are stressed, water quantity and quality issues are prevalent. Increased pumping for irrigation on row crops should be in the region. Fire danger is heightened. A lot of concern about taking vehicles and machinery out into the dry fields because of the fire risk. Municipal water supplies in Rapid City, a lot of demand exceeding more than twice last year and exceeding where we were for the month of June in 2012. In addition, dryness has persisted again in some areas, the lower peninsula of Michigan and in northern Ohio, following wet conditions over winter and into spring, and that wetness is important because it's helped to buffer some of the effects of the more recent dryness. So if that dryness continues, it's likely to impact corn, hay, Christmas trees, young and recently transplanted fruit trees. But with some prospects for rain over the near term, some of these impacts could be reduced or simply not developed as they appear to be now. For more information about drought impacts, you can take a look at the National Drought Mitigation Center's Drought Impact Reporter. You can also report those impacts in your area if you're experiencing them. But that's another product that you can find more detail beyond what we're presenting here. Now moving on to the forecasts and outlooks, where are we headed from here? And the 7-day quantitative precipitation forecast highlighting the expectation of a continuation of this pattern of above normal precipitation throughout a large portion of the region. So areas that are wet may be getting wetter, and otherwise areas that need some rain may have an opportunity to experience some of that and start to recover a little bit from dry conditions. But still quite a bit of concern farther west in the Wyoming, South Dakota area, not projecting as much relief in that region. Now looking ahead at the 8 to 14-day outlook for the period July 28th to August 3rd from the National Weather Service's Climate Prediction Center, the projection or outlook is for above normal temperatures being with an enhanced likelihood through particularly the southern and eastern portions of the region. But otherwise, an expectation of near normal temperatures throughout much of the upper plains and upper Midwest. And again, the areas coupled with that, a slightly enhanced likelihood of above normal precipitation for that region. So really what we're looking at here is the forecast of persistence, that what we've been seeing over the last few weeks likely to continue for the next few weeks. The monthly outlook for August again shows a similar picture in terms of temperature, in this case with an equal chances, kind of a lower or weaker signal in terms of temperature for the upper plains, but otherwise an enhanced likelihood of slightly above normal temperatures perhaps through the southern tier of the region, and then possibility of above normal precipitation in some areas there that might need it in the upper plains, and otherwise perhaps a bit elevated chance of dryness in the Great Lakes area, northern part of Michigan, and otherwise simply not a strong signal to get an indication one way or the other of what we might expect. And then going for the seasonal outlook for a 3-month period, above normal temperatures expected with enhanced likelihood throughout the country, though a greater likelihood in the south, southeast, and northeast portions of the west. And the precipitation pattern, again, some hope for the folks in the upper plains of perhaps above normal chances of being above normal in precipitation. Otherwise, no real signal throughout the rest of the plains and Midwest. One other implication of this, and we haven't really in the past referred to the energy sector, but found some information there from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, noting that relatively mild conditions over the winter and earlier this year had led to a decrease, a year-over-year decline of 5.4% in retail electricity sales. But with the projections that we've just looked at in terms of above normal temperature through a region, and this is nationwide, we don't have the level of granularity to tease this down to the region, but nationwide projecting a 2.9% year-over-year increase in retail sales of electricity, with the culprit there being primarily above normal temperatures, highlighting the Midwest. Now, on to ENSO and La Nina. We're back to a neutral phase after a strong El Nino event through the late last fall and into last winter. And there has been quite a bit of speculation that we may be moving into a La Nina phase, and if it was a strong El Nino, perhaps it will be a strong La Nina. The outlook last month was with a relatively high degree of confidence that we'd be moving into a La Nina phase. I think a 75% chance of that developing later this year. That's toned down a bit, and this is an important point to bring out. If you look at the graph here, you've got a lot of lines that can be somewhat busy, but you've got a couple other events, 1982, 83, 1997, 98, strong El Nino events, like the one that we just concluded. Those are highlighted in a little darker color. And then the current year, 2015 and 16 in black, you can see that they were tracking pretty close, but over the last month, June into July, the decrease in sea surface temperatures started to level off. It wasn't dropping as quickly, and that's kind of an indication there's cold water at the surface and below the surface, but the mechanisms to really get the La Nina kicked in are simply not developing at this point as they're anticipated. And Doug Cluck there had given me a heads up on a nice quote there from NOAA blog on this, and I'll read that. To get a La Nina started, someone, the ocean or the atmosphere, has to make the first move. The ocean has done that. The ocean surface has cooled somewhat and appears to be waiting for some stronger surface winds to upwell still colder water. To get the La Nina to grow, we need more upwelling. It is the atmosphere's turn to play ball. Is it going to kick in, or isn't it? So we're waiting to see whether those winds pick up, but right now the indication suggests that our previous forecast or projection of La Nina, we're kind of backing off on that a little bit. So in this next slide on the left-hand side, you can see the probabilities of the various phases. So in the red, the probability of an El Nino is extremely small. The green, the probability of a neutral phase, and the blue, probability of La Nina. And you can see that as we move forward, the probability of staying in neutral is declining, while the probability of moving to La Nina is increasing. But that probability is only reaching about 60% by the November, December, January period. And again, last month that was more in the 70% to 75% range. The model projections, various models for INSO shown on the right, again, represent a range of possibilities moving forward, but have generally toned down. So there are a couple models that feel quite confident that we'll move into a significant La Nina phase, but the majority suggests that if we move into La Nina, it's likely to be much weaker than what we might have been thinking earlier. And some models suggest that it may not develop at all. So if it does, here's a reminder of generally what the impacts are likely to be. But again, this represents an average, a composite, and not the circumstances or impacts associated with any particular event. And when it comes to La Nina conditions, there's quite a bit of variability in terms of what impacts develop and then how it expresses itself over the region. So at this point, it would really be premature to say too much because there's just too much uncertainty at this point about how that's going to play out. If it develops and becomes very much more likely as we move forward, we'll go into more detail regarding projected impacts, and I suspect you'll see some more information coming out from this group. Based on that, we'll look at the final outlook for the winter, December, January, and February, and this outlook is essentially a La Nina outlook in terms of cooler conditions in the northern plains, warmer across the southern tier, wetter conditions to the northern areas and the Great Lakes extending down into part of the Midwest, and dry across the south. So again, that projection is still largely based on the expectation that La Nina will develop, and again, the probability is above 50%. So that's what we're thinking. So to summarize, precipitation was above normal for much of the region over the past month, including extreme events in portions of Kentucky. Dryness eased over portions of Iowa. Meanwhile, areas of emerging drought expanded and intensified in portions of South Dakota and Wyoming, while dryness persisted in areas of Michigan and Ohio. Temperatures moderated over much of the region during the past month before a heat wave accompanied by high humidity developed and created stress during the past week. Though extreme conditions affect some areas, conditions over the region have been generally favorable for agriculture. And finally, La Nina conditions are likely to develop into the fall or winter, though the probability has decreased over the past month. So that's a conclusion to the information that we have to provide with this update. Some additional information about the webinars, again, where you can find past webinars, and some links to some very useful information sources and our various partners that contribute to this report. If you have questions afterwards, certainly we have the opportunity in just a moment to go into a question and answer mode, but beyond that, there's some contact information for some folks here in the region that if you would like to follow up with more personal questions. So with that, Doug, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Stuart. Nice wrap-up of issues and outlooks concerning this part of the world. It's now question and answer time, if you will. And if you have a question, there is an interface under the attendee slot where you can, or there's a question panel you can hit, and just click that, and you'll get a little question mark by your name, and then I'll find you and turn you on, so to speak, in terms of letting you speak through the interface here. We do have a couple questions from Benjamin Diamond. Let me see if this works. All right. Hey, Benjamin, let's see if you can say something. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey.
All right. Yeah, we can hear you, so go ahead and ask those couple questions that you had.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to understand more about the interpretation for two of the new products that were introduced, like the evaporative stress index and the modified stress degree days.
Yeah, can you go back to those, Stuart?
Yes, let's see. And then, yeah, I'll kind of turn that over if anybody has any perspective. We don't have anyone from Midwestern Regional Climate Center on the call.
I'm sure well, there may be. Let me look here real quick. Who can I put on the spot? Feel free, both Barb and Dennis, if you want to help describe that as well.
Yeah, but otherwise, I'll get started, and then I'll be happy to pass along if anybody else wants to add any comments. So, evaporative stress index, I think it's a newer tool, and it's basically trying to get at potential evapotranspiration versus actual evapotranspiration. So it's looking at the notion of how much water is being demanded by the atmosphere versus how much is available from the soil, such so that if we're in a wet situation where there's been a lot of precipitation, there's plenty of moisture, that essentially means that the atmosphere and plants and so forth are able to get the water that they need. But if there's dryness and particular high heat and low humidity and such, there would be the potential for a high level of evapotranspiration, but there's not enough water to support it, and that would create stress. So that may be a bit simplistic, but if anybody else wants to add to that.
Well, we do have Brian Fuchs on the line. I don't know, Brian, do you have any, from the National Drought Mitigation Center, do you have any other input other than what Stuart said?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good overview. The ESI tool is being developed by Martha Anderson and her group, and what we're seeing is it is picking up some of these areas where you are seeing that evaporative stress, and some of that is due to the temperature component as well. I would say if you're interested in more, there are some literature articles that are out, and if you do a Google search of evaporative stress index, you'll come up with a USDA page that Martha's group has put together, and there is a lot of description and links to the background of this tool. But I think what Stuart gave was a good explanation.
All right. Okay. And then the other tool I think Benjamin was asking about was the modified stress index degree days from the MRCC. And Mike Timlin, I found you, so you're in trouble now. Do you have 2 cents in trying to describe that?
Yeah, basically that's, if you do modified growing degree days, it caps the high temperatures at 86 degrees because the corn doesn't grow better if you get that much warmer. You're getting to that point where the physiological response from the plant is actually not as good once you get those higher temperatures. So you're not accumulating growing degree days in that same rate. This stress degree days is basically just to take that max temperature when it gets over 86 and try to keep track of how many degrees over 86 degrees you are, and then accumulate that day after day. And that gives you an idea of how much stress is on the plants. It doesn't get into anything with the precipitation, whereas if you have plentiful water, there's less of a concern with higher stress degree days, but it does give you an idea of how much stress the plants are under due to the temperatures.
Okay. Benjamin, does that satisfy your
Yes, thank you.
questions? All right. I got a question really quick from Mike Muse, who says, will the presentation be available? So what we do usually, as far as the presentation and the recording that we're recording as we speak, is put them on a website, two websites actually, one on the Midwestern Regional Climate Center and the High Plains Regional Climate Center. Both of those links to where they are, or where they will be, sorry, in the next day. Sometimes it takes until Monday, but usually they're up by sometime on Friday. Anyway, those links are in the email that was sent out to alert you even about this webinar series. So hopefully you got that. If you don't have that, please send an email to me. It's my name, doug.cluck@noaa.gov. And I'll make sure you get what you need, either a PDF copy or a copy of the actual PowerPoint. Now, I had a couple hands raised as well. Bryce, I think I saw you. Well, saw you next. So let me mute you. Okay, go ahead, Bryce.
Yes, thanks a lot, Doug. Good afternoon. And had a question regarding a comparison, Stuart, to 2012, because on the call last month, there was some reference made to what was developing during late spring, early summer in comparison to 2012. And I wanted to see what you thought of how things have evolved since then. Is the pattern for temperatures and so forth still in that ballpark? I was not on the call last month, and so I didn't get the full details on the discussion, but that reference did come up, and so I wanted to see how you would describe what we're seeing in relation to 4 years ago right now.
I would, there's always a concern, and first of all, thank you for the question. There's always a concern, when we look back 2012, we're looking at a very, very negative situation for most folks throughout the region, and as such, we're always kind of on pins and needles when there's a reference to something like that. There's some similarities and such, but so that's a natural comparison to want to draw, and like I say, there was some reference to that last month. We were dealing with some particularly high temperatures in the upper plains and such. But and again, I'm coming from the perspective of Kentucky, although I've been talking to my colleagues around the region, and from our perspective, this is a very different year. I don't draw at this point, especially having the benefit of the last 30 days. I do not draw any strong connections there, though. And some of us were talking just a day or two ago on this, that one thing that really stands out as a difference is that drought of 2012 was a drought associated with heat, but very dry heat. The dew point temperatures, the humidity was actually exceptionally low. In this case, especially recently, we've had some very high dew points, very high humidity. So the characteristics of the air mass is very, very different at this point than what we were looking at 2012. And again, a month ago, it didn't look this way necessarily, but I would be very, while I would want to ask that question of are we seeing similarities to 2012, at this point my response would be that's a great question, and my answer is you'd have to reach pretty far to draw many parallels.
Yep. Let me go ahead and agree with Stuart on that fact for a number of reasons. One is you can look at the drought monitor maps there and see how widespread 2012 was. It was also arguably a La Nina summer. Again, La Ninas tend to be quite variable as opposed to El Ninos. There's a lot more unknowns during a La Nina than there are during El Ninos, especially in the summer. So things like this tend to develop, like in 2012, slightly more regularly, but though that's out on a limb to even to say that. The other thing was, as Stuart alluded to, temperatures, although we had a warm winter this winter, we didn't have, if you remember 2012, we had an exceptional record-breaking March with incredibly warm temperatures. It did cool down after that and got more reasonable, and we even got some rain during the between April and May, and then it shut off. It really shut off completely for a huge area. It wasn't until late August that we even saw the glimmer of rain via a decaying tropical system that came up and actually impacted basically Kansas City east and dropped quite a bit of rain across that area. And also, I think the key in this situation, this few days that we're going through, number one, this is climatologically the hottest time of year for the most part in this part of the country. So the fact that we're having hot temperatures isn't is climatological in many respects. The thing that sort of we're looking at a little more closely, and we don't have stats out on this right now, but we're going to try to get them out, is looking at the heat stress index. So when you combine the amount of humidity with the actual temperature, how often do we see that, and has that trend actually increased or decreased or whatever across our area? And as you well know, livestock, ecosystems for sure, human beings definitely, especially in cities, pay a steep cost for these long stretches, and really anything over 2 days really of extreme temperatures like this can really put a burden and impact on all of those systems, as well as your energy bill as well. And I think Stuart alluded to that a little bit too.
May I ask another question?
Yeah.
Okay. And thank you, Doug. And this has to do with this particular situation we have. The overnight low temperatures have been very, very warm, and while it doesn't seem like there's a big problem with crop conditions right now, they're the best that they've been. Gosh, 2014, 1994 come to mind for matching that with excellent conditions, terrific. But is there the potential that it could be so warm at night that that's actually kind of inhibiting crop performance? Are you concerned about that at all?
And I'm going to, well, Stuart, you can answer that, and then I think Dennis probably will have a 2 cents on that one as well.
Yeah, let's just turn it to Dennis. I think he's the best guy on this.
That's right. He's with USDA now. Hand it to him.
Yeah, that's right. You have all the answers.
Bryce, you're dead on in that these nighttime temperatures are something that is going to drive some level of concern. Fortunately, crop conditions have been pretty good, and that's part. It's an odd thing that it's driving itself. The crop conditions are good. Crops are generally in pretty good shape. They have ample moisture, so when the heat is coming, they're pumping out a lot of the moisture that's raising the dew point that's helping keep us warm overnight. But then that is going to push them along through growth stages a little more quickly. And that's always the concern with these overnight temperatures, that they move through their physiological stages more quickly than they usually do. And so we are going to lose some yield because of this. The fortunate aspect is for large chunks of the Corn Belt, it doesn't look like this is going to be a prolonged event. We're going to have several days of it, and then we'll see some easing from it. Probably western parts of the Corn Belt have seen a bit more of this over a longer period of time. Eastern part of the Corn Belt, not so much. So yeah, we're going to lose yield. How much? I think that's still something that we don't have good numbers on to determine how much yield loss will occur because of it.
And that yield loss, Dennis, from what I understand, is partially dependent upon the maturity of that particular field of corn. So one field of corn next to the other one, depending on when they're planted and the maturity date and all that other stuff, makes a huge difference. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We're fortunate, and it's a lot. You know, we've passed tasseling in large parts of the Corn Belt. Other ones, we're still hitting that point, so that's going to cause us a little bit of an issue. But you know, the rain over the last month really, and even the last couple of weeks before this happened, I think eased some fears of you know, wider spread crop problems.
I have another potential question, I think, from Mary Nelson. If you'd like to comment, feel free.
I'm sorry, I raised my hand by accident.
Well, it's an open forum. Do you have anything you want to ask or comment on?
I actually am sitting in for information. I am an Ag and Natural Resource Program Coordinator with the Extension Services in Illinois, and I'm just trying to keep up to date on things in case I get questions from farmers and producers in my office. I apologize for interrupting.
Hey, not a problem, not a problem. Let's see, I've got one other comment question from Mark Ewens. Hold on, Mark. I got to find you in this mess here. There you are. Mark, I think you had a question about ENSO and PDO and phase and structure and all that kind of stuff. Well, on this kind of call, we're not going to get into that in depth, but and you can re-ask your question as soon as I guess I finish my comment, but there's a lot of correlation between ENSO phase, as you probably are alluding to, and what we call the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. And again, I don't want to get into the science here too far because this isn't the group to do that, but there is a relationship between the two. Some would say, and these are respected climate research people, would say that the PDO is somewhat dependent upon the ENSO and not vice versa. So anyway, Mark, do you want to say any more about that in terms of impacts in the north central part of the U.S.?
I didn't want to get into a lot of detail either, Doug, on the science, but just that when we often talk about analogs, and I heard 2012 being mentioned, that we have to make sure that we look at the large picture as well, because every year is going to be modulated by the very low frequency signals such as the PDO or AMO, and the shorter terms, even the AO and NAO in the summer, more so in the cool season. But there's a lot of research that needs to be done, and I'm glad to see the tools that have come such a long way in the agriculture side, because it helps our folks up here in the northern plains.
Yep. Absolutely, Mark.
And Doug, let me follow on with one thing. You know, there was the 2012 comparison, and you kind of alluded to La Nina. We have to wait. This is not a La Nina summer yet. We have to kind of wait and see where we end up. This could potentially end up being in La Nina, but it may not be, depending on how things play out.
And that's what I was alluding to with the PDO comment.
And the connections, and just so everybody knows, connections are not as robust, certainly to the equatorial Pacific as they are in the wintertime. In the summertime, the exceptions of that, of course, are tropical systems that happen to, subtropical systems really, that happen to impact either the southwest or southeast part of the United States for the most part. Any other, let's see, I'm looking for other questions and comments out there. Benjamin is asking, was 2012 a La Nina summer? I'm going to say, and please correct me when I'm wrong here, anybody on the panel, I believe it was. I don't remember what the strength or anything else was during that time, but I believe 2011 and 2012 both fell into the La Nina category. All right. No one's dissenting, anyway.
I'm looking.
What's that?
I'm looking. I'm trying to decide if you're right or not.
I was looking up to you, Doug. Don't think you're getting that easily.
Oh, I'm not off the hook quite yet. Well, as
2010 to 11 and 2011 to 12 were both La Ninas. The 2010 to 11 was moderate. The 2011 to 12 was weak.
Was weak. Okay.
And we came out of it by the last season of it was FMA. So by March, April, May, we were out of it.
Yeah. And
right. So by summer, I mean, if from a true La Nina, I just found it here too. that summer we were not in one. The signals would be neutral.
I don't want to say it's a fallacy or you're wrong or anything like that, but there probably is a little bit too much emphasis on saying La Nina or El Nino summer. As Mark was alluding to, there are so many other parts of the long equation of what is going to be affecting and how long droughts and heat waves and everything else is going to be affecting any part of the country, which makes our summer forecasts much harder, especially the precip side, than the winter ones. So I'll say that just so everybody knows. And I know that people try to use this information in all kinds of ways, and there's probably people who know a lot more than I do about this. But yeah, so I'll leave it at that. And yeah, all right. Any other questions or comments before we? Boy, we're almost done at the hour. Before we sign off today, I'm looking here. I don't see any more hands up. Going the other way this year. Going the other way this year, Vice 2012. Yeah, right. And Mark's comment there on the questions. All right. On that note, any other, Stuart? You got anything else you want to say, or any of the panelists in terms of helping people out here?
No, I think we had a nice round of questions, and we're happy to be able to provide this service, and it would really represents, as we've mentioned, a very, very collaborative effort among a lot of folks to help pull this together. And
I thank you very much for your help this time, Stuart.
Okay.
And on that note, I'll talk to you all hopefully again in August 18th, I believe, same time. Jim Angel, the state climatologist from Illinois, will give us his 2 cents along the same lines. So thank you all very much, and see you next month.